Good morning and welcome to a very hot and very sunny circuit Paul Ricard as we get set for the first part of qualifying for this third round of the Blancpain GT Series Endurance Cup. It is the traditional limbering up for the Spa 24 hours. In other words, a mere 6 hours of racing starting at 6 p.m, going on to midnight into the darkness to give the teams and the drivers a chance to get used to what it is like to race, and indeed for the mechanics what it's like to work in the pit lane in the darkness. And in these hot temperatures, it's going to be a grueling, demanding race all round.
Le moins qu'on puisse dire, c'est que l'on a deux gros morceaux qui nous attendent déjà aujourd'hui et puis fin juillet, bien évidemment. Bonjour Laurent.
Bonjour Thomas, oui exactement, on a deux gros morceaux.
Third endurance race of the year, the team to beat, Lamborghini drivers Andrea Caldarelli, Mirko Bortolotti and Christian Engelhardt, ahead of the Mercedes combination of Jimmy Eriksson, Maxi Buch and Franck Pereira, with Alessandro Pierguidi, Michele Rugolo and Passin Laforis with their Ferrari third in the points, ahead of Davide Rigon, Victor Scheitar and Miguel Molina. Bentley drivers Andy Suchet, Maxime Soulet and Vincent Abril have work to do, and of course Bentley came oh so close to a win here last year. It's a venue at which Bentley has won in the past, so both numbers 7 and 8 will be well worth watching over the course of 6 hours. And of course elsewhere you've got the Pro-Am and the Am Cup battles to look for, with a whole host of exciting combinations of drivers to look forward to, with a number of brands starting now to show their hand for Spa. So for example, you've got an extra brace of WRT run cars, one for Antonio Garcia, Nico Müller and René Rast. That's got to be a potential winner. The second car, Peter Schotthorst, Frederick Vervisch and Christopher Mies. That again could be a winning car. The circuit remains pretty much unchanged since it was launched in the late 1960s, and John Watson, it's a real challenge of the drivers.
I think the big challenge here this weekend is it's just after 10 o'clock in the morning, and I think everybody wishes it was a few minutes after midnight just to find some escape from the heat that we've been enjoying, maybe put it that way, up at Paul Ricard. But 5.7 kilometers length, 13 turns, but most of the turns have been given names, so rather than saying turn 6 or turn 7, we will call them by their name. Probably the most famous corner on this circuit is the Courbe de Seine at the end of the long kilometre-long Mistral Straight. Big challenge. A lot of runoff on the outside, but as we saw last year, it was decided to put a check on the abuse of track limits. So keep an eye out for the exit of Seine in particular, for drivers getting more than 4 wheels off the racetrack. In fact, they're almost halfway to Toulon before they come back onto the circuit.
Well, there at pit out is perhaps the car to beat, number 63 Lamborghini of the Grasser racing team, Andrea Caldarelli sharing with Christian Engelhardt and Mirko Bortolotti. That car will venture out once there is a gap in the traffic, and this has been the car that won at Monza, won at Silverstone, and has really been very hard to beat this season. Lamborghini, years past, run by Reiter, but it's the Grasser racing team that really has taken the squad, with the assistance of Lamborghini Squadra Corsa, to great results. This V10 engine car, belting out 560 horsepower, could be the winning car, but in 6 hours of racing, effectively 2 endurance races back to back, it could well be a different result.
Well, we've got 58 cars on the grid for this afternoon, 6 hours or 1,000-kilometre event, and it's a busy racetrack. In spite of being 5.7 kilometres in length, you will find throughout the event there will be periods when you'll be driving around all on your own, particularly in the nighttime hours. And then you'll come into a group of cars, maybe 6 or 8 cars, all battling amongst themselves for position. So it's an interesting and a very valuable experience for the upcoming Spa 24 at the end of July.
Audi, of course, potential winners there, potential winners here, with a number of teams running the cars, including ISR. Number 75, for example, is going to be for this weekend the car of Felipe Albuquerque, Clement Schmidt and Philip Salaquada. The sister car is going to be another one to watch as well, Jamie Green, Kelvin van der Linde and Frank Stippler. So that great driver combination, Jamie Green DTM winner, Kelvin van der Linde, who has won the GT Masters, the German GT Championship, and Frank Stippler, who's won most things going, so that car doesn't want for any experience, does it? As the green flag is waved, and our first 15 minutes of track action for the cars today is underway. Qualifying is go. The 911 Porsche waits its turn. Robert Renauer, Jürgen Hering and Alfred Renauer, the Renauer twins, doing the driving work in that car along with Jürgen Hering, and of course, managing the traffic is important. You don't want to necessarily be 10th out because you're going to be in the body of all of the field. And there you can see the ISR Audi trying to let some of that traffic go, buy yourself a bit of clear track space. So it's 5 kilometres long, 58 cars. Traffic is going to be a problem.
Well, managing traffic with less than 15 minutes to go, bearing in mind teams who were out on track yesterday evening, the second of the 2 practice sessions, ended up with the 84 Mercedes-Benz, Frank Pereira, quickest to 157.6. So that's, if you want, the go-to time that everybody will be looking at. But one would assume as we go through the second and third of these qualifying sectors that eventually, with fresh rubber and lower fuel loads, and whomever the designated driver for that final section of qualifying will be, we should see something, maybe getting into the high 1 minute 56 seconds. But it is, David, as you pointed out, and as you can see in the opening lap, everybody making their way down the Mistral Straight. There's nowhere to go. There's just cars everywhere.
And of course, the teams tend, not always, but they tend to keep their faster driver in abeyance until Q3 because that's when the car is at its lightest. It may even be that they keep an extra set of tyres going into the third session, so this might be an issue where the drivers doing Q1 will run on older rubber. You, of course, are limited to the number of tyres that you can run across the weekend. You get a point in each class for pole position, though, at the end of qualifying for this round, so that is important in itself. And come the race, you can anticipate the drivers, the teams, to be working towards stopping on each hour, partly for fuel and tyres, but also, of course, because the maximum you're allowed to do behind the wheel, 65 minutes. Will Stevens out on track, then a winner in Blancpain Sprint, a class winner at Le Mans.
Yes, he's been a very busy boy and very hot, I think demanding 24 hours up at La Sarthe in the sort of northeast corner of France, but coming down to the Côte d'Azur, or the plateau up from the beach, which really has got no escape from the build-up of heat. So Will Stevens and many others that were competing last weekend will be actually still, to some degree, wishing it wasn't quite so hot.
Yes, one of them is, for example, Johnny Adam, who was a real hero in the GTE Pro battle, winning it on the penultimate lap for Aston Martin. Remember how good he was at Monza in that last stint? Well, it was another similar drive by Johnny Adam a week ago. Now, number 5 then, hard at work. This is the car of Marcel Fassler, Will Stevens and Ries Vanthorpe. Marcel Fassler credited with doing the driving duties at the moment, as treble 7 is the Team HB Racing Bernard Delhay, Mike Sturzberg, Gilles Vannelet Lamborghini. That's a car from the AM Cup, and proving as it locks up for turn 1 that you can make mistakes early doors.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big lock-up coming into turn 1, and that's clearly going to be a heavy flat spot on that left front tyre, so I'd assume a visit to the pits very quickly will be required, otherwise the vibration you get through the steering is just literally undrivable. So this is number 5 on screen and showing 5 overall, but anyway, fastest overall, first and second. They have actually put markers on the exit of many of the corners. I noticed there at Senior, and also on the exit of what was turn 2. There are marker boards almost just built into that side of the circuit to indicate those are the track limits.
So Marcel Fassler will set the target time effectively here, and will make his way up towards the timing line shortly, but he's got traffic ahead of him as the cars now accelerate up towards the completion of this lap, and Fassler was backed out of it because he's got all that traffic ahead. It was going to be a wasted lap, so he's bailed. Let the traffic go now. Yeah,
I mean, very much the fastest in the first 2 sectors, but in fact, although they were the quickest in the set, they were way off what was achieved sort of early evening, Friday evening, and now he will have to do the whole process again. 23 Nissan, the sister car, the number 22, Matt Parry, did a really, again, an outstanding job. Yesterday evening was 8th quickest in the Nissan, and again illustrating that maybe there's not a changing of the guard, but the youngsters are coming in that 22 Nissan.
Stuart Leonard has done the target time thus far, 2 minutes 1.457 in number 17 Audi. We are some way off there for what they were doing yesterday, but you can anticipate that to come down by the time we get to Q3. You can see the chicanes there, which are used indeed this weekend for some of the support races, but on the Mistral Straight for these cars, it is that long drag. Very fast all the way down to Senior. McLaren, which has struggled on the new Pirelli tyre this year, hoping to be able to improve fortunes this weekend. 59 there, Andrew Watson at the wheel. Well, McLaren victorious here 12 months ago, but it's been a difficult season, hasn't it, this year?
Yes. In the sprint round in Zolder, the penultimate sprint round, Andrew Watson got that car onto the front row of the grid, got a penalty at the start, and then that put them on the back foot all the way through. Baz Lounders, again, looking down at bits of paperwork, working out what we need to do, where we need to be. So the 59 car still timing and scoring on the screen, but looking back now onto this kilometre-long Mistral straight that marks out the Paul Ricard circuit, the Grand Prix loop that we're running on, as one of the great circuits. It was originally, I think, completed in 1969. First events was Formula 2. And when I'm talking about Formula 2, I'm not talking about contemporary Formula 2. I'm talking about Formula 2 as it was in the 60s and 70s. And then, of course, the French Grand Prix was run here in July of 1970. And will return here in 2018.
Which is great for France, and it's going to be great to see this circuit adapt to modern day Formula 1. It'll be a real test for the drivers, that Mistral straight particularly, won't it? Christopher Mies has now set the target time. He's done a 58.9. We've also got Giancarlo Fisichella on a mission because he's done the absolute best in the first sector. 59 McLaren that we've been looking at. Andrew Watson is currently 19th. Actually, he's not done too badly here because he's got a fair amount of clear track space, although he's catching traffic up towards the end of the lap into the Virage du Pont now, into that right-hander, and we've got the first track limit issue of the day. Caitlin Wood having a lap time cancelled for exceeding track limits, John.
I didn't want to say it. I'm glad you did, because I thought it might have been Thomas Enger who's in that car for Ryder Racing. Thomas Enger being a big part of the Ryder engineering group these days, not just as a former driver and driving here, but also on the more commercial side of the operation these days. But obviously an abuse of track limits has been noted. Car 24, best time has been cancelled, and it's just a signal to everybody that the track limits here are going to be observed, and you know, I bang on about it all the time. Delighted that they will be. Giancarlo Fisichella.
So it's good to have Fisichella in the championship this year, although as yet we haven't had a Ferrari victory, but this again could be a car that triumphs over the course of 6 hours. Last year it was the yellow AF Corsa car, wasn't it, the Lafauras Pierguidi Rugolo entry that came so close, but they just mistimed a pit stop, really. They weren't quite as quick on their toes as Baz Lounders was for what was then Garage 59 McLaren.
Yeah, the Baz Lounders run 59 Garage 59 team really saw that opportunity and just about got the message to the car to come in now, because when you come out of the final turn onto pit straight, the pit lane entry is pretty close, and they got him in, and that was the difference between the McLaren winning and the Ferrari losing.
There's a delay in giving some of the times, the timing system having a little bit of a moment this morning in the heat, but Giancarlo Fisichella's last lap has just been confirmed as the fastest, a 1:58.207, so he's almost at the end of his subsequent one, but Fisichella has now been put at the top of the timing screen, so this is the quickest car in the session, and Giancarlo Fisichella then on a 1:58.207 tops the times and bails from that next lap. So work done. He's shown what he's capable of, what the car is capable of. AF Corsa gets the data it needs, and is he going to go for one more run, or is he going to bring it into the pit lane and cycle through for the second driver in that car, because the next element of qualifying should be done by Marco Ciocci.
Coming up to the end of pit straight, now it's a big heavy break into effectively turn 1 and 2, better known as the Curve de la Viave, or Viave. So that used to be, in the good old days, even without mega downforce, just about, deep breath and get through it. A big oversteer one way, big oversteer the other way. But now, of course, it's a much slower entry and a much slower exit, but it is therefore a much safer corner for the developments that have occurred aerodynamically since, well, the middle 70s.
How challenging a circuit is this, or is it all about the Mistral straight and just having a quick car in a straight line and lots of grunt?
The biggest challenge at Paul Ricard is that the circuit changes so much from where we are now, with what's coming up to 10 past 10 in the morning, to where we will be at 6 o'clock in the evening. The circuit is almost like a living entity.
Okay.
Track surface changes, the ambient changes. As it gets hotter, the air gets thinner, so there's less aero from the car. As you get into the evening, then the air gets more dense. So it's more about how much the racetrack. When you could start with your car in a factory spec setup and drive it through the day, and you go through understeer, oversteer, and then you come back to neutral, and by the time you finish at midnight, goodness knows what you'll have. But that is a big part of what this racetrack has always been about.
And the teams yesterday were certainly early in the morning citing that some of the curbs have been painted, and this new paint that's been used has little tiny glass beads in it, and they were being flicked out at the cars behind. So quite a few cars had peppered windscreens and damaged bodywork. Hopefully that's going to bed down over the course of the weekend. There were quite a number of rather miffed team owners looking at a big bill at the end of the bronze test yesterday. The Jaguar, the Emile Frey Jaguar number 14 is the car we're looking at the moment, and that's working its way with a personal best in the first sector up towards the end of the lap. Lawrence Frey, the man behind the wheel for Q1, and 42nd fastest at the moment that car is, but it's going to go quicker surely this time around as it comes up over the timing line. He'll get 2 more laps out of this, I would predict, as he comes over the line now. That puts him up to 33rd, so it's a step in the right direction.
Looking a little bit further down in 3rd place, O'Donoghue in the Nissan number 23, fastest overall sector 1. Good, sector 2, just a 10th down on the overall quickest. So the 23 Nissan may improve, assuming it gets a clear lap. Looking at the Bentleys, we haven't had much chance to talk about the Bentleys so far this weekend. Last year, this was their race to lose, and they did.
Yeah.
They dominated really the qualifying. They were the strongest team, 2 cars, either on the front row or second row, but they were really the team that everybody said it's a shoe-in, and it all just again disintegrated for the Bentley team.
Yeah, number 7 had a power steering problem, didn't it? And then 8 had that fire in the pit box. And
yes,
although it recovered, it lost over a lap and gave the race to, effectively, to McLaren. So it's the one that got away, and it's been a disappointing season, this for Bentley. The commitment is there, and yet again here, an awful lot of Bentley guests. There's a big Bentley presence on site. So can that car, either of those 2 cars, come away with a win? Andy Soucek is at the wheel of 8, and he's currently 8th fastest. Fisichella has pitted, by the way. He's still the fastest. O'Donoghue has gone second. John identified he was on a quick lap. He's gone second fastest, 0.153 of a second back. And then Christopher Meeks is third, with Sam Tordoff fourth in the McLaren. That's encouraging. The Strachan McLaren 158.477, and that means that the runner-up in last year's BTCC is only 0.2 away from the fastest time.
Very good effort. I mean, Q1 is a little bit of a sort of, let's put on what we've got, the best of our rubber. It's not representative necessarily of the out-and-out pace of any given driver-car pairing, as we still have the view of Andy Soucek as he makes his way around the last sector, but certainly the last 3 corners. Very, again, you talk about the racetrack and the character. It's these final 2 corners that are frustrating because the grip is always going away by the time you get to them. And in fact, a very late cut as Andy Soucek comes out of the final turn onto pit straight, the Virage du Pont, and dives into the pit lane as we look into Ollie Jarvis, another late nighter last weekend. Could have been historic. Could have been an historic weekend for Ollie Jarvis.
Well, a class win and 2nd overall wasn't a bad result, was it? And the Jackie Chan DC Racing team winning LMP2 in the 24 Hours of Le Mans. But here he is, back with Bentley overalls, a very different sort of car to race this weekend. He's, of course, new into the Bentley team for this season, and Ollie Jarvis hopefully is going to be able to deliver here as number 99 BMW with Maxime Martin at the wheel, heads up towards the timing line. This could be a good car over 6 hours, and certainly Maxime Martin, who's won the race in the past in the Mark VDS BMW Z 4 days, is still very, very quick. He was a star at Hungary last week in the DTM. He's gone 6th fastest, 158.726. The man, or one of the winners a week ago, René Rast, in the DTM Audi. He's on the entry list, of course, here this weekend. So he and Maxime Martin, rather than thinking sports cars, also, of course, you can put them in the context of DTM. Yes, lots of people were busy at Le Mans, but people from all disciplines come and race in Blancpain GT. Maxime Martin, then, the best of the BMW drivers thus far.
Yes, on BMW, I mean, this is an important race within itself, but you have to think back 1 year to when these cars, or one of these cars, came away a victor in Spa 24. We've got a Spa 24-hour test upcoming shortly, and then the event itself, the creme de la creme of GT events on a global basis. Alistair Sims and Philippe Eng just having a little chat, and you know, Alistair Sims, he almost looks like Harry Potter.
I know what you mean. So the 2 BMW drivers discussing life. And checkered flag is out at the end of Q1. So Giancarlo Fisichella's time stands 158.207. already that car has got James Collado in for Q2, which is interesting because the driver rotation should have had Marco Ciocci in for the next section. Anyway, we'll worry about that when the cars go back out on track, as hustling on also is 98 BMW. Tom Blomqvist at the wheel of it, 17th fastest. Tom Blom, another part of the DTM entry. So, ex-Formula Renault racer, Formula 3 front runner. Tom drove in the Formula 3 European Championship at the same time as Esteban Ocon and Max Verstappen, and was a race winner. He was, on his day, just as good as the other two, driving for Trevor Carlin's team, and was the only other person to win races that season, but now very much part of the BMW Motorsport family.
Are you not noticing when you walk into the paddock that all these kids, these youngsters coming in, are making us look really quite elderly?
Yes, yes. Yeah, even without my spectacles, I'm noticing that. Yes, because the average age has certainly dropped. And it's true, isn't it, of GT racing as a whole, because young drivers are realising they can earn a living doing this rather than spending a fortune in single-seaters and perhaps not get to Formula 1.
I think that's the key. And you look down the paddock, you think, well, where are their single-seaters? Are there support events here that we don't know about? No, there aren't. They are being engaged because they are the future of this discipline within motorsport, and the Blancpain GT Sprint and Endurance Championships are absolutely now high on the list of events that they want to put in their tick boxes.
Now 78 is Miguel Ramos in the Pro-Am Barwell Run Lamborghini, and it blasts over the timing line now, taking the flag. And does Ramos improve right at the very end in that car? The answer is no, stays 20th fastest. So, job done. But of course, the grid is the best time of a car across the three parts of qualifying. So it's all going to shuffle again.
Maximilian Buch is preparing himself, so he's going to be second in that Mercedes-Benz. So it'll be Jimmy Eriksson, looks like he's going to do the final bit of qualifying. So Maximilian Buch in a revised liveried Mercedes-AMG Team HTP Motorsport Mercedes.
Well, let's just have a look at how we stand so far. 55 Ferrari, Giancarlo Fisichella doing the time, a 1:58.207, just over a tenth up on Lucas Ordóñez, with then third fastest, the time being done by Peter Schotthorst, ahead of Sam Tordoff, Edward Sandstrom fifth, Maxime Martin's BMW sixth, Andrew Watson seventh in the McLaren, another good effort. Now don't forget, we've got 58 cars, not all of which ventured out in Q1. In fact, we had a couple that didn't go out onto the circuit, so just have a look through the classification as it is now. Lots of different names leap out at you. Peter Terting, for example, another former works driver in the DTM and the World Touring Car Championship, coming into Blancpain this weekend. You've got the Michael Bronizeski Ferrari. He's on double duty because he's doing the GT Sports Club races tomorrow, just like last year. Robin Frins joining Stuart Leonard and Jake Dennis in the number 17 car. Of course, Robin Frins a winner with Stuart Leonard in the qualifying race at Zolder in the Sprint Cup. The Jaguars have got themselves together. Lorenz Frey ahead of Marco Seefried. Hugo de Sadelier, fresh from LMP2 at Le Mans a week ago, joins Josh Kagan and John Venter in that WRT Audi. His father Stanislas de Sadelier, a GT racer of decades past. You've got Rory Penttinen joining Pierre Eret in his Ferrari. And the two that didn't go out, 26, the Santilot car, which Greg Gilbert would have driven, but he can't be here first thing this morning, so therefore it skips Q1. And the same is true of 888. Jacques Driver is away at a business meeting, can't get back in time. So that's why that car didn't go out. 55 is the fastest car, and one of its drivers, James Collado, he's with Dakota.
James, P1 so far so good.
Yeah, considering our issues yesterday, we had some big problems. We found some cracks in the chassis. So the mechanics overnight, I guess we're really busy welding the thing back together. So not perfect. I think the times are misleading. We still got a few issues, but you know, there or thereabouts, we've just got to do the best we can with what we've got. And Giancarlo's in the car next, so he'll get a good feel for it. And yeah, we'll see you towards the race.
Let's see how it goes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so James has done the time. Apologies, the timing screen was telling us it was Giancarlo Fisichella at the wheel of the car, but James Collado saying that Giancarlo will be behind the wheel of it next. We were told it's going to be Marco Chiocci for the next part of qualifying, so there's been a shuffle around of the driver order there that we weren't informed of from the AF Corsa squad. But Q2 gets ready to go. You can look at it in isolation as to a separate 15-minute period, but also, of course, you take those times into account, and we're going to see the order shuffled again, aren't we, John?
Yeah, it's just interesting, James Collado saying that they discovered chassis cracks. I mean, that's sort of something that's pretty fundamental, and normally when a car would be prepared for an event, particularly an endurance event such as we have here this weekend, those kind of issues you would have thought would have shown up, but clearly the handling of the car was totally out of character. And it was then when they sort of delved deeper, whether it was where the engine attaches to the chassis or goodness knows which part, James Collado didn't enlighten us as to which part of the chassis they had to weld up. The good old days of welding up chassis, I thought they were well gone, or welded gone.
Well, thankfully, job done, but James saying they've still got some issues. Let's see whether they are going to be a drama over the course of the race. You just got a glimpse a moment ago looking up the pit lane of the return of Reiter Engineering's car, number 24, the Reiter Young Stars entry of Caitlin Wood, Marco Harry-Stackengas and Thomas Enger. And it's good to have Reiter back on the grid. For many, many years, Hans Reiter was the man that ran the Lamborghinis.
Very much so, but for me, it's great to have Thomas Enger back as well, because if you wanted a personality or a character, track temperature, you can see now almost 40 Celsius, ambient just under, well, just over 30. Barometric pressure and humidity, it is humid, but it's obviously just the nature of this time of year at this part of the world. There's a bit of a, what you might call a sort of a muggy, foggy, the air isn't the kind of gin clear air that normally you associate with Paul Ricard, because we're, 700 meters above sea level, and the air should be that little bit clearer, but it is oppressive. Will get much, much worse throughout the afternoon. Hopefully by 6 o'clock, when this race does finally, or does get underway, things will be beginning to relieve everybody and make it a lot more comfortable.
Are we anticipating, therefore, that drivers will be doing a double stint? In other words, 2 sets of 65-minute maximum in the car, or because of the heat, would they do one and then get back in later for a second go?
I suspect that it'll be an hour and driver change. The danger, of course, is if you put a driver in, the third driver in, who's going into a dark scenario. So I would imagine most teams will probably do an hour in, particularly if the heat remains at this very oppressive level that we've had over the last couple of days. Simply, it's just, it gets so hot inside a GT car, and it is a circuit where there are parts of it which are very high work rate. Then you got that moment of relief and calm where you can sort of sit back, draw breath down the long Mistral straight, and then you sort of brace yourself for the entry into scene. And of course that's on your own. If you've got a lot of other cars around you, it is a lot more focusing, as we see the cars making their way down the Mistral straight right now on this outlap in the second sector of qualifying.
And so the current fastest time set, as we now know, by James Collado, 1:58.207, and let's see how that is going to be affected in this next part of qualifying, because, for example, there, 63 out on track now, the very, very rapid Lamborghini will have Christian Engelhardt at the wheel of it, the former Porsche star. 23, a car that won here 2 years ago. He's good to go, and it was Lucas Ordonez that went out in the first part of qualifying. Alex Bunkum's name on the graphic just a moment ago, and then it's going to be Katsuma Tsuchiyo to do Q3, we're told.
People kind of tripping over one another as they come up to the completion of their outlap, and with only just over 12 3/4 minutes remaining, you do want to try and find at the earliest opportunity a bit of clear space in the racetrack, but very difficult when you've got effectively now 58 cars going out on track. So do you hold back and let the first flush of cars go through and then you join in, or do you put yourself at the very front of the grid to make sure that you're first out and get that opportunity? But inevitably, when you come to the end of your first out lap, then you're going to meet those people that have been holding back. So it will take maybe a couple or 3 laps for the field to find space, settle down, before they can maybe give some indication of what the potential is. Still 1:58.2 is the benchmark time James Collado set in the opening segment of qualifying.
bear with us a little bit on driver ID for this part of qualifying as well, because lots and lots of the teams are all shouting on the instant message service to the race directors saying that the timing screen is displaying the wrong driver's name. So we've had a question. Oh, and a spin. That's the Ryder car, isn't it? That losing it in the background in 24. That was Caitlin Wood. So
well, she was in Q1. She can't be in Q2.
The timing screen said she was in Q1,
okay.
but she wasn't. The team on this message system have just confirmed that it's Caitlin Wood for this session. It was Hannah Steckengas in the first one, and there, just looping it, coming onto the Mistral.
Yeah, I mean, I suspect probably a little bit of inexperience on her part. Probably cool or cold, even though we've got a high ambient, but in relative terms, cool rear tyres. The back end just snapped, and once it went, the usual moment of the pendulum effect taking over, and around she went. It's focusing on your outlap to do that down at the turn that leads on to the Long Mistral Straight. And there isn't really a name for it. They just call it the turn onto the Mistral Straight.
Isn't it Le Col?
It might be Le Col. Let me look down. I've got so many maps with names on them. The official map doesn't give it a name.
Oh, right, okay.
But the map that we did earlier on has got a name, which is, you could be right. Le Col, indeed.
Well, Caitlin Wood, the Australian.
It's appropriate, isn't it?
Well, yeah, if you're going to learn.
If you're going to learn, you've got to spin it Le Col.
Le Col, exactly, yeah. Back to school, Caitlin, right. Well, she's got going again, thankfully, so we don't have a yellow flag anywhere anymore. The circuit completely green in terms of flags. Struan Moore, who has really adapted well, hasn't he, away from McLaren into the Nissan this season. And he was good at Monza, he was good at Silverstone, he's good here. And powering his way up towards the timing line, runs a little bit wide over the curb. He's got the Oman Racing Team Aston Martin behind as well, which is Ahmad Al-Hafi, Johnny Adam and Salah Yolok also joining them this weekend, who drives for TF Sport in the Road to Le Mans. And was the first Turkish driver ever to race in the 24 hours, in fact, Salah Yolok a week ago. Now, there is 22. Now, what sort of time is Struan Moore doing? He's done 7th already within this part of qualifying. Within Q2, he's gone 7th fastest. That doesn't yet put him into the top 20 overall, but it does illustrate that the pace is there.
Yes, and this is the car that Nissan have put their young, maybe the future drivers for the Nissan team. And Struan Moore, Matt Parry, particularly Matt Parry has been outstanding every time he's been in the 22 car. Currently it's Adam Christodoulou, the number 4 Mercedes, who is quickest some, 0.6 of a second, but that was his first flying lap. So in fact has now been overtaken by the Pro-Am 87. So that is the ACA ASP Jules Gugnon, not behind the wheel, but that is the car that Gugnon is in. And Jules Gugnon, another young driver, son of a famous father. Struan Moore goes fastest overall, Sector 2.
Absolutely. Now, the overall best in this session has just been done by 87, the ACA Mercedes of Nico Bastien. So he's gone fastest in Q2 and second overall, the time of 1:58.209. That means he's 0.02 of a second away from what James Collado did in Q1. So very, very competitive indeed. Now, okay, James Collado was suggesting that those times weren't representative out of Q1, but it's a good effort by Nico Bastien, who is still developing as a driver. He's not as experienced as many of those out on the grid. Struan Moore is the next one to look for, though, number 22, hustling on. If he can get below a 1:58.209, he's going to be good, but he's lost a big chunk of time, hasn't he, in the last sector on this lap as he comes over the line now. No, he's managed to claw it back, and it is a 1:58.070, which is the fastest. So the clock on the screen was tricking us a little bit. He is now 10th up on Nico Bastien, 1:58.070, and that is the best out of Q1 and Q2. So that is provisional pole position for Struan Moore.
Good effort indeed from the young Scottish driver. So he will continue on, looking to see what he will get as he goes into Sector 1, as we look at Brett Sandberg. Mercedes AMG GT3s, all I'm just checking out the colour schemes, because we know the 84 Mercedes Maximilian Buch has gone all gold as opposed to its regular colour scheme.
We had different Mercedes liveries, didn't we, last year for the Spa 24 Hours, with the Linkin Park colours adorning one of them. But 15, Brett Sandberg, the American driver then, is in his first year of European racing. We're getting more and more lap times cancelled for track limits, one of which has just been Giorgio Maggi having a lap time taken away. a number 67 Lamborghini. Andrea Rizzoli's Ferrari has gone 5th fastest in this session, and Miguel Molina is now the quickest outright, 1:57.787. So we're almost on a par with what Franck Pereira did yesterday.
Yeah, it's just under a tenth of a second away from the time set last evening when track temperatures, well, actually in reality probably not hugely different to where we are right now. It's only the middle of the afternoon where it got outrageously warm, but nonetheless pretty good effort.
And a good effort by Stefano Telli, because the Emil Frey Jaguar has now gone 2nd fastest, 1:58.049. So it's Ferrari, Jaguar, Nissan, the top 3, both in Q2 and outright. Molina, Ortelli and Struan Moore. Struan Moore is on another good lap, incidentally, because he has now done a personal and an absolute best. Adam Christodoulou goes fastest for Mercedes, 1:57.785. That puts number 4 Mercedes onto provisional pole position, and we've got 6 minutes to go.
0.02 of a second between first and second.
It's getting very lively, isn't it, now? Because almost every time somebody crosses the line, they improve. And Struan Moore bails from that lap. I said it was an absolute and a personal best. Well, it's never completed. He comes into the pit lane, so we don't get to see what that could have been. The team manager of number 99 is being summoned to the race director. That is, for this session, Alexander Sims, number 99. It was Maxime Martin.
It's unusual.
Absolutely.
Wonder why. Wonder why. Let's go back to the Jaguar. So I mean, this is the issue. You get into all this traffic coming. That's the sequence of corners after scene. Then you've got the very, very, very long double droit du Boussouet.
Now, is that Stefano Ortelli backing off? Yes,
is.
it was. Oh, and no, without a wheel is 88 in real strife. That is the Felix Sarales car, the Puerto Rican driver.
Where did that come off?
Oh, good question. And it's
Probably
a long limp home, isn't it?
Well, it's a long way back, and again, lots of bodywork going to be, I suspect. That was, the wheel came off and totally, he's actually pulled off on the inside of the scene. So car 88 slow on track, lost one wheel, the message indicates.
Yeah. Now the timing screen's telling us it's Renger van der Zande, so let's go with that for the moment. I was just looking to see whether it was an out lap, but no, because his last lap was a proper flying lap. It's not that it's come off after a pit stop. He's been out on track for a while.
Very, very unusual. It's understandable if you have a pit stop, change a set of wheels and tyres, that the wheel will come off on that out lap, but not when he had done a flying lap. He was up to 5th place, a lap before the wheel departed, so that was a quick lap from Renger van der Zande. But of course now making his way back slowly as the 99 BMW, fastest overall sector 1, personal best sector 2. And let's see what Philippe Eng can do. And he comes across, it was 9th.
So there's van der Zande limping on. And actually, he's coming back at a decent pace. And because there's no wheel, there's no rubber flailing around, he's not doing any bodywork damage.
All he
might be doing suspension damage.
He's doing the bodywork directly behind the wheel arch is just grinding away as he comes in. Now, whether that's relevant to the car's aerodynamic performance or not, we'll have to wait and see. But certainly, there we look, that is the new colour scheme.
It looks good, doesn't it?
It's almost like a bronze rather than a gold, isn't it?
Yeah.
Maximilian Book. So we're really waiting to see what the 84 Mercedes true pace is. It was the car of the evening last night, personal best first and sector for the young German driver, being coming through the penultimate corner, not overdriving, which is always the problem. You come in too hard into the final turn, then you can't get it straightened up and get it sorted out. Book goes 8th quickest.
And there is the 3-wheeled Mercedes. And the attention and the concern is why the wheel came off more than anything else at the moment. So we didn't see where it parted company. Out gets Renger van der Zande. Now, is that car going to be able to go out of Q3 is the next question.
Well, I think they want to get it back in the garage so the entire team can work on the car and discover, was it a finger problem, which sometimes is the case, or was it something more complex? But there's not a huge amount of energy being about getting the car back in the garage as quickly as possible.
Now their 22nd fastest currently is the number 333 Ferrari. Daniel Kalvitz, regular driver of that car, not here this weekend. He's injured himself in an accident, so Daniel Karlvitz stands down and Matteo Malucelli put into that car in his stead.
So what are Karlovitz doing? Not another push bike.
Don't know, haven't got to the bottom
So
of that
many
yet.
drivers use cycling as an exercise and then they fall off.
Yeah. It's a great shame because Daniel Karlvitz,
Very
as
good.
we've seen, is a very,
Absolutely.
very quick driver. Former German champion, former European FIA GT3 champion, but Matteo Malucelli, who drives instead, is no slouch either, and he's going to bring that car, which is from the Pro-Am Cup, down the pit lane. Number 7, Bentley, is about to go. Blasts its way down the pit road.
Bentley not really at this stage showing what one would hope would be top 20 pace. Still, no, there's no Bentleys in the top 20 at the present time, but there's still the session to go with them. As we look at Maximilian Buch comes through, final turn, it goes across start finish line, 84. Still showing inch now up to second. So consolidating what it did almost in an identical time to the 100th of a second. So Max Buch, second quickest, 1:57.674.
So 67 thousandths away from the top time. In terms of Bentleys, you've got Maxime Soulet 27th in the session, Oliver Jarvis 33rd. There's the replay of the Mercedes.
And you can see what's happening. It literally the bodywork on the just behind the rear wheel arch is what's supporting the car, and that will have been pretty heavily ground away as we go back to the Mistral straight. And there it comes. Pace of the Bentley. This is going to suit the car in technical terms absolutely perfectly.
Mark Rostow at the wheel of 26.
He's just gone past two cars. Just boink, boink.
Bentley 7 is ahead on the road, isn't it now? It's Oliver Jarvis at the wheel. R25, Peter Terting's car is the next one to look for. Peter Terting, former Audi DTM racer, but he came straight out of the Polo Cup into the DTM, and it was a big jump too soon, and he didn't really gel with those cars, so he was quite quickly dropped. Went to Seat's World Touring Car Squad for a time and fell out of favour with that, and has spent quite a long time trying to regroup. But he's been, in the last 2 or 3 seasons, one of the real stars of the European GT4 scene. So hopefully we'll see more of him in GT3 machinery now.
I mean, a leap out of VW Polo Cup into DTM. I mean, I don't think anybody could make that leap. That is the two categories, a million miles apart.
So into the pit lane come those drivers that don't feel they can improve on their last lap. This is the Maxi Buch Mercedes, and into the Virage Dupont. Spectacularly coloured car, and I still think this could be a winner this weekend. Bouncing wide over the curb. Of course, all your reference points will start to change over the course of the race, won't they, as the light fades. But the light's going to fade, what, after 10 o'clock?
Yeah, but I mean, around that time, but there's that period between twilight and darkness where the effectiveness of the headlights, which in darkness are, I mean, literally blinding, very difficult actually for us to identify the cars coming in a head-on shot. But it's that period between twilight and darkness that is the most, I think, the most difficult of any 24-hour event. And because we've got clear skies, the sun sets obviously in the west, so as the cars come down, start finish straight, they'll be driving into that big ball of red sun, and finding your braking distances into the first corner on the pit straight. It's you maybe use your reference points on either side rather than looking to the braking point a little bit further down.
Now there's a car to watch. Michele Rugolo is third in Q2 in the number 50 Ferrari. And of course that was a car that came close to a win here 12 months ago. So Alessandro Pierguidi will take over now for the third part of qualifying. You get the feeling with that car that they've not yet had that breakthrough win, but it's always tantalisingly close, isn't it? They've come near on a number of occasions.
I mean, look, Monza was the obvious place because they had pole position, and it was a racetrack that everybody had assumed would be very favourable towards the Ferrari 488s, and of course then we had the horrendous start to that event, and then the restart. Complex in a Pro-Am car to have that kind of continuity from qualifying all the way through the three drivers in the current lineup.
So Q2 at an end, and we are just over 5 minutes away from the third part of qualifying getting underway, and then we'll be able to see how the grid shapes up. There's one driver returning this weekend, which is Luca Filippi, who, if you remember at Monza, caused an accident in qualifying, took 2 cars out before the race, the Lamborghini he was driving, and he has been dropped from that team. He has come back to a different Lamborghini squad, but gets his 10-place grid penalty to carry into this race as well. Let's go back to the pits and join Dakota.
Miguel, now you're currently in P1. Are you happy with that?
Yeah, it was a good lap actually. We know that probably the most important qualification is now, but it's always good to be on top in any case. So yeah, it was pretty good lap. So easy handling the traffic. So I'm pretty happy about the car setup and how everything is going so far.
Okay, thank you.
Miguel Molina from the SMP Racing Ferrari Squad, Audi DTM racer, coming into GT cars this season, and has been very, very quick indeed. As the third driver for each car now cycles through, and then the final 15 minutes will get underway. We've got 4 minutes of this break to let the teams do what work they need to get the drivers changed over. And then we'll start to get a proper idea of the grid with, at the moment, Miguel Molina the fastest, 1:57.607, 67 thousandths clear of Maxi Buch, and the top 19 cars all within a second of each other, which isn't bad around a 5k lap.
No, it's not. But what is missing in that top 20 is number 63, the Lamborghini, which Mirko Bortolotti will no doubt be strapping himself into, and the car that has been the go-to car in qualifying pretty much, whether it's in Blancpain Endurance or even in sprint.
But I think they've done that before, haven't they? They kind of tricked us into thinking that they weren't competitive, and then bang, at the end of the final part of qualifying, they're right up there. We'll see if it happens again in this final part, as Miguel Molina is currently the fastest from Maxi Buch, Michele Rugolo, and then fourth fastest Jonathan Hershey in the Emil Frey Jaguar, Adam Christodoulou fifth, then Giancarlo Fisichella ahead of Fabian Schiller, Stefan Ortelli, Struan Moore and Will Stevens to round out the top 10. And scroll down through the order and you can see how we look at the end of Q2 with these narrow margins between each car, and you can tell, overlooking the pit lane where we are, that the pressure is on for Q3 because the line of cars ready to go is getting longer earlier as well, which people are going to have to work to do. Well, 76 Audi is a long way back. Number 1, surprisingly, this is the Antonio Garcia, Nico Müller, René Rast Audi. Only 41st. René Rast behind the wheel will be well worth watching. Also number 16 Mercedes, Matt Griffin in a Mercedes. Yes, really, that's going to be a car to watch in this next session. And there, at the very foot of the times, is number 63, but expect that to change by the end of the next 15 minutes of the session.
Yes, I think that what Grasso Racing has done with the 63 car is literally do what they need to do. Interestingly, in yesterday's session, they were only 16th quickest. Now, again, whether they're just playing this game of waiting until it really counts, we know we've got a great car. We've proven that all year. Let's wait. We don't need to waste tires. We don't need to waste track time. We know the car is going to work here. So can Bertolotti yet again put that 63 Lamborghini, if not on pole position, up on those important front 3 rows of the grid? Important because it enables you, when the lights go out at 6 o'clock on Saturday evening, to make the break. You don't want to be caught on the 10th or 15th row or whatever of a grid in the mid-pack, because it will take you the best part of the first hour to get yourself where you really think, in performance terms, you should be.
It also shows the confidence of the team, doesn't it? That they are prepared to almost sacrifice Q1 and Q2 and just stick to their own program, not be tricked or scared into doing anything different because of the pace of other cars.
Now, maybe we're being a little bit sort of optimistic, and maybe they do have some issues that they've been hiding. But fundamentally, the consistency that the Grasso Racing team has had, and the 63 car in particular, as well as the 19, the 2 sister cars, their performance has been, when it matters, it's there.
Yeah.
And with Mirko Bortolotti, who has been, again, I think a revelation this year, and it really has shown his prowess behind the wheel of the 63 car, whatever circuit, Brands Hatch, Monza, wherever it's been. I mean, the big disappointment obviously was in the sprint round at Zolder some 3 weeks ago, at the start of the qualifying race on the Saturday. Got involved in an incident, and that took the car out.
So the two Nissans are there, as also is Thomas Enger. And number 50, Alessandro Pierguidi. That's going to be another driver, another car to watch as well, because we know how fast he is in the AF Corsa run Ferrari. There's this whole fleet of cars run by Amato Ferrari's team, some under the AF Corsa banner. There's the Kaspersky Motorsport entered car. That's the Fisichella Chiocci Collado entry, and then Spirit of Race as well, the other entrant, as the green flag is waved and those on the fast lane pour out of the pit lane. There are other teams waiting a little while to try and find a clear bit of track space. Easier said than done before those cars are released. But the last 15 minutes to determine the grid, with one or two drivers like Michael Meadows, for example, as well as Luca Filippi carrying a grid drop into this race, we're going to have the times now start to shake out the bulk of the order.
So the 84 Mercedes seems to be the first car on to the circuit for this final bit of 15 minutes of qualifying. It goes rather quickly, and now it will count. This is what will make the difference between what we've seen in qualifying 1, qualifying 2, and may well see a major reshuffling of the top 20, and certainly expect to see a number of cars that are currently outside, including the two Bentleys. They've yet to get into the top 20. See one or both of those into the top 20, along with others that have been disguising their hand.
So that's a great shot of not just the variety on the grid, but the length of the Mistral straight up towards Senior. Through goes Thomas Enger in the number 24 Reiter Lamborghini, the orange one, Team Lazarus car. Then you've got the Nissans, 22 and 23, also in there, the WRT entry. The Richelme Berton and now Benoit Trelier, Formula Mont winner, driven car. The Aston Martin goes through the shot. Johnny Adam at the wheel of the Tom Ferrier run car. And still they come with, as we've been saying, a 58 strong entry this weekend.
The camera position at the sort of midpoint of Scene corner, looking down, you don't actually, when you're driving, appreciate just the incline up into Scene, and that camera view gives you a much clearer perspective of it than you get as a driver, because you see the corner, you're looking at it from a long way down the straight, and you're beginning your process of lining up, and you're not looking at the incline, you're looking at the apex.
So the XGP engineers look on as now onto a proper flying lap goes 84. From Pereira at the wheel of the car as he threads his way up towards the chicane now. Speed building on this first flying lap. From Pereira moving into Mercedes for this season, and he's been a real asset to the team, hasn't he?
Very much so. I mean, he was a star in the Porsche when the Porsche had only one star on it, and then he moved to Audi and again shone brightly. So we're going to ride on board with the 84 Mercedes, Frank Pereira. So making his way is the far end of the circuit, then coming through Les Cols onto the Mistral straight, and you sit here and the speed picks up to the point when you approach Scene corner, somewhere in the region of maybe 260 to 70 kilometers per hour, depending on the BOP and aerodynamics of your car. The temptation, now I talked about the incline there, you're getting an indication. It's quite gradual, but as you get almost to the corner, it becomes more obvious, and it's a blind apex. You make your commitment before you actually have to see it. Don't run wide, because there on the outside of Scene are those corner limit marker posts. And then there's long, good apex. Frank Pereira gets the car in, and that's really what you want. But what he doesn't want is the traffic, two cars ahead of him interfering with this. It'll be his first flying lap. Fastest overall Sector 1, personal best Sector 2. So will this be an improvement on the 72 car, the Ferrari 70 lap of 1:57.6? It ought to be. A bit of cooperation there from the Ferrari or the Lamborghini, couldn't quite see what it was. So it comes across start finish line, and it is an amazing 1:57.5.
So that's the target time in this session, but it is also the pole position lap as well. From Pereira then has done a 1:57.586, his first flying lap, puts the car onto provisional pole position. Can anybody else fight back? Well, yes they can, because Matt Parry's Nissan straight away goes even faster. Number 22 Nissan has done a 1:57.489. We've been getting excited about Matt Parry all season, and there's more justification. So it looked a great lap from Franck Pereira, but Matt Parry behind him was even faster. Robin Frins has gone 4th, Katsumasa Chiyo 5th. So how about that for the Nissans? As now Davide Rigon goes back to the top of the times in the Ferrari, 1:57.274. And also up to second fastest now has gone Alexander Sims in the BMW. So it's Rigon, Sims, Parry, Pereira, Frins, Chio, and now you're on board with Bortolotti.
And if Mirko Bortolotti thinks he can get pole position here, he's going to have to beat a 1:57.2. He's got a personal best first sector. He'll need at least one purple, maybe 2, to secure that provisional pole, but we're on board with the Lamborghini. Listen, he has to get out of it, obviously, into scene, but it's a momentary lift that lets the engine breathe back. You've got to get on the throttle before you enter the corner to keep the car stable. And is that the 84 Mercedes directly ahead of him?
Yeah,
I think it is.
right, yeah.
So Franck Pereira, no doubt, is still looking for a lap, but for Bortolotti, not ideal to catch these 3 cars at this part of the lap.
Just very quickly to say, Jelmer Berman's Mercedes is now fastest, 1:57.097. Let's go back on board with Bortolotti.
More importantly, Matt Parry's done fastest second sector overall, currently 4th. He could put it on provisional pole and demote the number 4 Mercedes.
Up to the timing line comes Bortolotti then. He's not quite caught the traffic, so he's going to escape, isn't he? As Alessandro Pierguidi goes fastest, 1:56.777. Bortolotti goes 6th, 1:57.441.
Getting very busy. That's a significant increase in Alessandro Pierguidi, 0.3 of a second quicker than the number 4 Black Falcon Mercedes. And what happened to Matt Parry? He bailed at 1:57.5. So Matt Parry fastest second sector overall, but now just literally his time, every car coming across is almost demoting him a position.
Such as number 8 Bentley, because Vincent Abriel has now gone 4th, which is a very good effort. And 5th fastest is Tony Villander. We've not yet touched on that Ferrari, but it's new for this weekend. And both Bentleys are up there now. You're looking at Matt Parry, but Stephen Kane, who's been shown a driving standards flag, he's just gone 5th. So it's Pierguidi, Berman, Pereira, Abriel, Kane, Villander, Rigon, Sims, Bortolotti, Parry, the top 10 overall.
So the 2 Bentleys, again, team that didn't feature in the first 2 qualifying segment, back up to where pretty much they were 1 year ago, and looking for further improvement. There's the number 4. That was the quickest car. Jelmer Berman comes across the line, personal best first and second sector. What's going to be, can he respond to Alessandro Pierguidi's time? Yes, he can, 1:56.6, and Mercedes provisional pole.
By 0.141 of a second, wow. Also, with the variety of brands up there, shows the BOP is working. Sadly, we've not got many McLarens up at the pointy end again. McLaren really have struggled on this new Pirelli tyre for this year, and the optimism here, well, can it be rewarded over 6 hours as the track changes, as John was explaining earlier. Back on board with Bortolotti. He's now down to 10th.
Interesting line that Bortolotti is taking around. Just coming through this final turn, he's coming in. That's the reason why he wasn't actually on a flying lap. He's got 7 minutes remaining. He can come in. If he wants to make an adjustment, he might feel that something isn't quite to his liking, or maybe the usual thing, a new set of Pirelli rubber, because that's where you'll gain the biggest increments around a lap.
Now we have a slow car out on track, we understand, coming through turn 12 towards the end of the lap. No yellow flags being shown, so hopefully that's not going to be in anybody's way. But the teams are being warned about it. So Jelmer Berman, who is new to the Black Falcon squad for this year, proving his worth. He's the fastest, as John mentioned, 1:56.636 from Pierguidi, Pereira, Abriel, Kane, Villander. Now you've got 333 next in the queue, which is Matteo Malucelli 7th, Rigon, Sims, Bortolotti rounding out the top 10. There is Davide Rigon, 8th fastest. That's the car that Miguel Molina took to the top of the times in Q2, but Davide Rigon, another hugely experienced single-seater racer turned GT driver, working his way now through senior. And the SMP Racing, the Russian team, running with AF Corsa, so it's certainly a very, very well-drilled team, this.
It is, and pretty smart on the racetrack as well. So let's have a look and see what Rigon can do as he comes up into these few corners. This is it's one of the more difficult corners on the circuit. This Virage de Bandor goes on and on. You want to take a late apex, but the front of the car always inclined to want to wash away before you can get the nose in. So it's sometimes a corner, it's a slow entry and a quick exit rather than trying to nail it into the corner and then suffering the consequences.
Right, there's Rigon, who I think has backed out of this lap, hasn't he? Looking for clear track space.
Looks like it, yeah. There's a lot of traffic ahead of him.
But he stays out, and he's going to catch that traffic next time around, potentially.
René Rast has gone fourth quickest. Finally, the number one Audi has appeared in the top 20.
Well, finally, an Audi has done something worthwhile, hasn't it? Because they've been nowhere really of late. Robin Frinn's 16th, for example, in his WRT entry. But yeah, René Rast, welcome back to Blancpain, René. DTM winner a week ago, and fourth in the times now. We've got 66 being warned about track limits as well. That's the Attempto Lamborghini with Marco Mappelli at the wheel of it. And lots of the teams asking where their drivers are deemed to have exceeded the track limits, because they've tried to tell them, you know, don't run wide or else, but if they're doing it, they want to know where.
Principally, I would suggest it's on the exit of scene. There are markers on the exit of the corner, and if you go up to the left of those markers, you will clearly have exceeded track limits. So if you look like you might be hitting one and you can't pull the car back in, you've got little option but to go left, and that will then see that particular lap deleted. There are other parts of the circuit after the turns 1 and 2. Again, in the exit there was a part where there was a little bit of track limit abuse. Otherwise, if you abuse, there we can see the exit of scene. So you've got to really keep all four wheels to the right of those two distinct markers on the exit of the corner.
And a spin there for 77. That is the Patrick Cuyula driven Lamborghini going all the way around. So Patrick Cuyula doesn't make mistakes very often, but Cuyula gets going again. Having been one of the real stars 2 years ago in the Lamborghini Super Trofeo. We've also got number 19, Norbert Siedler, being reported to the stewards for a pit lane speed violation. That, remember, is one of the Grasser Racing Team Lamborghinis. And it must have been on his way in, because Grasser is at pit out. They literally fire up and drive over the white lines. It had to be on the way in.
Easily done. Sometimes the pit lane speed limiter on some cars, we had this earlier in the season, works only on or in first gear. So if you happen to come into the pits and you're in second gear, your pit lane speed limiter isn't activated. So you must, in some cases, use first gear.
Andy Soucek looking on in the Bentley garage to see Vincent Abril in his car, number 8, be 8th fastest at the moment. Johnny Adam is 26th. He just went through shot in the Aston Martin, the sole Aston Martin that we have on this grid. And currently, he's quite a long way back in class, 7th in Pro-Am. It's going to be very, very competitive this weekend, as ever. Pro-Am being headed by the Tony Villander Ferrari that's got Anthony Liu as one of the drivers who won the second round of the Blancpain GT Series Asia. That is racing this weekend. Indeed, race 1 taking place early this morning. But Anthony Liu has decided to come and race in Europe for a change instead of racking up points in that series. He's got Davide Rizzo with him, who was partnering him to that win in round 2 of the championship.
Vincent Abril in the number 8 Bentley, caught in traffic, and really either you just stick with it and let it work itself out, or you back off, let all the traffic get ahead of you. But then what ends up is those that have been following you are tripping over you. It's really, when you've got 58 cars, 57 cars on track at one time, and even if it is a 5.7 kilometre lap, one of the longer laps on the Blancpain Sprint and Endurance calendar during the year, nevertheless, just finding that bit of clear track as the 7 Bentley dives down the inside and consequently runs a little bit wide over the curb. If you get over that curb, there's a lot less grip, so there's no gain or no benefit. But personal best goes, and Stephen Kane goes up to 4th place.
And Davide Rigon has gone fastest on a 1:56.473. But yes, it's good to have Bentley back up there, but it's also good to have this great variety of the brands represented at the top. It's been rather Lamborghini dominated. Now Mirko Bortolotti is not done yet, is he?
I would hope not.
Where's he fallen to? 13th in the times now.
coming through this said the difficult virage de Bendor. This sweeping courbe de Galandon. What a mouthful.
And then to Virage Dupont up towards the end of the lap. Now, as far as Bortolotti is concerned, Sector 1 was a bit slower, Sector 2 was a personal best, and as he comes across the timing line, let's see what he can shake out of the car on this lap. He will go through, and the time is...
Well, it's 15th.
15th fastest, yeah. I was waiting for it to leap up the screen, but it was 2 slow sectors, sandwiching a decent one. 1:57.636 then, 2/10 down on his earlier best. Whereas the flag is out, and Franck Pereira has done an absolute best in Sector 1, but he's lost out a little bit in Sector 2. In that, and also now Alessandro Pierguidi has gone even better in the first sector. So this will be a good lap by Franck Pereira, but the one to watch is Pierguidi as up towards the timing line. Then now comes the Frenchman in the Mercedes. He'll break the timing beam, and does he improve? Let's see. Yes, he does. He goes third on a 1:56.721, but Pierguidi, front row last year, currently fourth. He's done the absolute best in Sector 1. You're looking at 72 Davide Rigon, who's done a personal best. He dropped back in Sector 2 by a tenth or so. A 56.4 on his last lap was good enough for pole position. That's a 56.7. He's still there at the top, but here is the man to watch. Alessandro Pierguidi, absolute best in Sector 1, personal best in Sector 2. Turning his way now through Beausset, up towards Bendor, then onto Village. He's had traffic on this lap to worry about, but as I say, he's not lost out too badly in that middle sector. It's still a personal best, albeit about 6/10 down on the absolute best, the overall best of anybody in the session. So, is this lap going to be strung together well enough to net pole position? Let's see. Sector 2, a personal best, but not mega, up towards the timing line. The time to beat is a 1:56.473. Alessandro Pierguidi started the lap fourth. He comes across the timing line now and goes second on a 1:56.599. He misses out by 0.126 of a second.
A Ferrari front row lockout.
Although there are others having a part to play in what could happen behind, like Jelmer Berman, who's done 2 personal bests. His last sector has to be a good one, but Pierguidi's last sector was not a good one, and so this might help Berman get onto the front row of the grid as he breaks the beam. He goes quickest of all! 1:56.442. He's fastest by 31 thousandths of a second. 2 personal bests and a not that great final sector, but all strung together. Jelmer Berman goes onto pole position.
It looked good on that final turn. He didn't overdrive in the exit. He got the traction off the final turn across the start-finish line. 1:56.4, 31 thousandths of a second ahead of the lead Ferrari, the 72 car of Rigo, and now it is a Mercedes Ferrari front row, and that will not change.
So Mercedes on pole position, and the top 20 cars covered by 0.999 of a second.
Used to be more competitive than this, I have to say. Used to be 0.7 of a second.
It bodes well, doesn't it, for a mega race, but a great lap put in by Jelmer Berman. And it just goes to show about a smooth, consistent run, doesn't it? None of those were absolute bests. The last sector was a touch slower than he'd done earlier on in the session, but the other 2 sectors were good enough, linked together nicely, to put him at the top of the times. Wow.
And I think that's the key. It's linking your personal bests. And if you get a purple, that's great, but it isn't necessarily going to put you to the very top of the timing and scoring, but Jelmer Berman. And it's interesting, the Black Falcon Mercedes team ahead of the 84, the HTP, which is currently on the 3rd row of the grid. Franck Pereira, who's sort of HTP's go-to guy to put it on the front row of the grid, he's down on the 3rd row.
And there are more surprises. Have a look at 4th fastest, the Emile Frey Jaguar of Albert Costa, one of the real underdog entries in the championship. So, Jelmer Berman, Davide Rigon, Alessandro Pierguidi, Albert Costa, the front 2 rows ahead of Franck Pereira, and then Stephen Kane's Bentley, Marco Ciocci lining up 7th ahead of Vincent Abril, Danny Jonquedea and René Rast, with 11th and 12th being Christian Kleen's Jaguar and Alexander Sims. Then 13th Robin Frins ahead of Cressoni, Tony Villanda, Matteo Maracelli, Dominic Baumann. Johnny Adam is 18th from Marciello Bortolotti, Fontana, Verviche, Gounon and Bruno Spengler, another DTM racer. In the end, Matt Parioni 25th. And the other Nissan, of course, to be found even further back, 32nd. So all the optimism ebbed away.
Well, I mean, at the time, Matt Parry did a brilliant job.
Yeah.
But that's the difference, because people go out later, they've saved a new set of tyres for this final qualifying sector, and you blink, literally, or you do your lap time 2 laps too early, and then you get eclipsed.
Now, of course, some of the teams will say that qualifying doesn't matter as much. It's a 6-hour race, and it's where you are at the end of the 6 hours that counts. And that's true enough. But as we've seen at Monza, we've seen in other races in the past, if you are in the body of the field, you're more at risk on the opening few corners.
As we saw at Monza, one of the problems at Monza was you had a lot of quick cars in that midfield pack, very, very anxious to anticipate the start, and the start being held at the 90Ks coming up to the finish line before the lights went out. So hopefully here, because of the proximity of the final turn to the start-finish line, there will be still a significant number of cars making their way round the final turn as the lights go out, so that might not be quite such an issue, but you will get people tripping over one another on the opening, up until the opening 15 laps.
Well, there is the car of the moment, the Black Falcon Mercedes that Jelmer Berman has done a great job in. Now, of course, that car has to go to the scrutineers at the end of the session, and the officials trying to marshal everybody into the right places here.
It looks good in white, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
I mean, it just suits, the colour suits the shape of the car, and it's distinctive as well.
The colours that it carried when it won the Nürburgring 24 Hours last year, but an excellent job done in that session by Jelmer Berman, who hops out of the car. And Christodoulou there to congratulate him. And let's see how that car pans out at the end of 6 hours of racing, though. That's the most important bit, as for now, Jelmer Berman can celebrate provisional pole position. Of course, there's the technical checks to do post-qualifying. Assuming all is good, that will be the car that starts from pole position. So let's have a look back at the highlights of the 3-part qualifying session as the lights went green for Q1, everybody pouring out on track, but very early we had this big lock-up from the 777 Lamborghini with Bernard Delhay at the wheel of it. Riding the curb in number 8 Bentley was Andy Soucek, as drivers got themselves ready for Q2, with the number 55 Ferrari, James Collado, being the one to watch in the first part of qualifying. The newly reliveried 84 Mercedes of Maxi Buch, Font Pereira and Jimmy Eriksson cycling through for the second qualifying session, with Mirko Bortolotti waiting until Q3 to do his driving duties. Caitlin Wood spinning out of Le Col onto the Mistral straight. It was a big, wild ride. Thankfully, no damage done. Christian Engelhardt with a problem, looking down to try and cure that as the 22 Nissan boomed along the Mistral straight and losing a wheel. Of course, heading for the pit lane was 88 with Renger van der Zande at the wheel of the car. 84 with Font Pereira at the wheel was oh so quick in Q3 over the curbs, but it was not to be, as pole position went the way of a Mercedes, but from a different team, of course. The Black Falcon car of Jelmer Berman taking the top time, and that will start our 6-hour race later on today from pole position, defeating the Grasser Racing Team Lamborghinis, defeating Bentley as well. It all bodes well for a great race to look forward to, starting at 6 p.m. from John Watson and David Addison. For now, bye-bye.